Well, tonight on Politics Unusual, the resignation of National Security Advisor Michael Flynn has put the Trump administration's relationship with Russia back under the microscope.
All right, Dan Bowens joins us now with a look back at the many times Russia's interactions with Trump have been called into question. Dan.
Well, Stephen Derry, throughout the stormy rise of Donald Trump, from billionaire businessman to the 45th president of the United States, there has been one issue he can't shake: questions about his connections to Russia. Back in 2013, Donald Trump brought the Miss Universe competition to Moscow, later tweeting a friendly invitation to Vladimir Putin, wondering if the Russian president will be his new best friend. Didn't seem like much at the time.
Putin's a killer.
Now, President Donald Trump's feelings towards Russia drawing much more scrutiny. During an interview with Bill O'Reilly, the president comparing U.S. political actions to Russia's authoritarian regime.
A lot of killers. We got a lot of killers. Why, you think our country's so innocent?
Michael Flynn's swift departure from his post as National Security Advisor, the latest controversy connecting the commander-in-chief to the Kremlin.
And Vladimir Putin, who you've expressed admiration for.
Wrong.
Well, you've expressed admiration.
Wrong.
Someone you see as a strong leader.
Wrong.
On the campaign trail, fellow GOP nominees accusing the billionaire businessman of being soft on Putin. By the summer, as WikiLeaks published stolen DNC emails, Mr. Trump suggested hackers could help find missing emails from rival Hillary Clinton's personal server.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing.
When U.S. intelligence services concluded Russia interfered with the election and former President Barack Obama issued sanctions, President Trump sent out another tweet calling the Russian president very smart for deciding not to retaliate.
If Russia and the United States got along well and went after ISIS, that would be good.
While Mr. Trump insists he has no personal connection to the Russian regime, people close to him do. Former campaign chair Paul Manafort stepped down as ties to a pro-Russian political party in Ukraine came to light. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson also once received a friendship award from Putin.
I do respect him.
Do you? Why?
Well, I respect a lot of people, but that doesn't mean I'm going to get along with them.
The president says he hopes to work with Russia to fight ISIS and has been non-committal on whether he favors lifting sanctions. That may be difficult now given the Flynn debacle, and new political conflicts are emerging. The New York Times reporting Russia recently deployed a missile violating an international treaty, challenging the Trump administration. And Mr. Trump recently tweeted Moscow has no leverage on him, saying he has no deals or loans in Russia. But back in 2008, Donald Trump Jr. was quoted as saying the Trump organization sees lots of money pouring in from Russia. Stephen Derry, back to you.
All right, thank you, Dan. Well, a Russian spy ship appears to be testing the waters with the new Trump administration. The Victor Leonov was spotted 70 miles off the coast of Delaware this morning. This is file of the ship when it was docked in Cuba back in 2014. It's said to be capable of intercepting U.S. communications and is armed with surface-to-air missiles. U.S. officials say the ship is patrolling in international waters heading northward, and yes, they are keeping an eye on it.
Up to 1,600 refugees from Papua New Guinea may be headed to the United States. A U.S. team arrived there today to begin screening people who are seeking asylum. Many are originally from Iran, Afghanistan, and Sri Lanka. The Australian government reached a deal with President Obama to resettle residents of island camps. President Trump, although originally called it a dumb deal, but now says that he will honor that agreement.
All right, and following the recent federal raids on immigrants, Democrats are pushing to make New York a sanctuary state.
Joining us now is Luis Miranda. He is a political advisor, founding partner, I should say, of the Miram Group, and a former special advisor for Hispanic affairs to Mayor Koch. Good to have you with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So first, let me ask you, what is your reaction to all of the ICE raids? 600 people across 11 states were arrested in a week, 40 in New York City alone. Is this the solution?
It's not new. It happened a lot and has happened. The focus has usually be criminals,
right,
rather than just normal people. But I think that the hype that the new administration has created means that everything is magnified. So as a result, people see this as a beginning of 12, 13 million people who are going to be deported,
right,
which is what at the end, when Trump was the candidate, he said he was going to do.
Right.
Right. How have his actions so far, it's only been 25 days in office, sort of lined up with what he said on the campaign trail?
It's, again, more hype.
Yeah.
But clearly, he did sign an executive order on the Mexican wall. He did sign an executive order to ban immigrants from 7 different countries.
Right.
So he is speaking exclusively to his supporters who applaud everything he does, even though he's creating horrible turmoil and created real chaos in immigrant communities throughout the country.
Right.
So as an alternative, perhaps, let me get your take on this. Democrats, the Assembly actually passed in New York State a bill that would make New York State a sanctuary state.
Correct.
What are your thoughts on that?
At the end of the day, we need to work with anyone, legal, documented, undocumented, who live in a place. The police needs to speak to everyone if they're going to solve crimes. They cannot pick and choose if they're going to talk to undocumented or documented people. If you get sick and you have a contagious disease, you should go to the hospital, and they should not be asking you immigration questions. So for the good of the society, we need to be a sanctuary place where people can receive services and feel no fear that they're going to be deported.
Right, so it actually makes it less safe if you take away the sanctuary element of it, which is the irony of the whole thing.
If you are sick with a contagious disease, you want to make sure that that person gets the treatment that he or she needs. So by pushing them from hospitals, from emergency rooms, from clinics, we are doing a disservice to all of us.
Okay, but I mean, nobody denies that immigration has been a problem. What do you see as a possible solution, as a lot of people, you said yourself, are panicking right now?
The only way, this is a national reality, so Congress needs to act. There has been many failed attempts under several administrations. Hopefully Republicans and Democrats can work in Congress to really put a bill forward that can once and for all, or at least for a decade,
is there an incentive for that, though, to happen, or is the incentive to keep us polarized like this?
I think so. I think that little by little what will happen, we cannot continue to live in this turmoil.
Right.
We cannot wake up every morning at 5:30 in the morning to see what anti-immigrant rhetoric it's coming from the White House.
Right.
So the hands are really the Congress. It's the one who needs to really do something positive here.
Well, we shall see. Luis Miranda, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for inviting me.
Pleasure. Okay, well, that's it for Politics Unusual. And for more stories about the strange political climate that we are living in right now, check out our Fox 5 NY YouTube page.